Jessica Gunning, you've been a fan of Richard Gadd's since his stage show Monkey See, Monkey Do, and I know you couldn't get tickets to the stage production of Baby Reindeer, and cut to 4 years later, you get a chance to audition for the show. So what do you recall feeling when you got that email about the audition?
Yeah, I remember. Well, I couldn't get tickets for the stage play, but I bought the play text actually, which was a little bit Martha of me, and read that and thought it was just amazing. I think he's such a great storyteller, and I'd seen his previous play as well, so I knew who he was. And then I remember the day, yeah, the email came through, audition for Baby Reindeer, and I got goosebumps. Obviously, I thought the play was amazing, and I really was fascinated to see how Richard would have adapted it for screen, but I read all the episodes in one go and just was hooked. I thought it was one of the best things I've ever read. Yeah.
Well, when you spent those 4 years, like, I guess I'm assuming memorizing the text front to back, like, did you ever think like, oh, maybe one day this would be adapted, for the screen and I could be part of it?
I never thought of that. No, I didn't think I could be part of it or anything like that. I just was interested when I heard that it was being made into a show. I was like, oh wow, okay. And then when it came through, I was just like, oh my gosh, because yeah, I always just saw it as the stage show, I suppose, first in my head when I was reading the play text. But I think he did such an amazing job at adapting it and creating these amazing characters who you just kind of feel so many things for. It's just a real feat that he managed to do that. Yeah.
Mhm. And I know it was quite a lengthy audition process. So what was it that like and reading with Richard?
Yeah, usually when I get things through, I'm a big believer in if what's meant to be is meant to be, and if you're right for something, then you are. But with this, I was really convinced that I knew how to play her. And I just kept thinking, if this got in somebody else's hands that maybe saw her in a different way to me, maybe saw her as, I don't know, scary or anything like that, or like the villain of the piece, it would be a real shame because I think the way he's written Martha is so nuanced and complicated. And I just kept thinking, I know how to do this. So over the space of about 4 months, I think I went in to audition about 4 times. Yeah. But I understand why, because obviously the dynamic between Donnie and Martha is so key into understanding the story and rooting for them at 1 minute and being worried for the next. So I think it really was, about our dynamic together. And luckily they chose me and took a chance on me. Yeah.
Mm. Well, have you ever felt that way about a role before? Like you knew how to play it and like you had to play it?
I did a film called Pride, and I remember when I read that, I was in a cafe and I honestly cried my eyes out for about a good 5 minutes after because that again, amazing writing written by Stephen Beresford. It was just so honest and such a lovely true story. And I'd only got given the scene actually for that audition. And when I came in, they said the thing about Sian is, she's a real person. And I was like, so real. And they were like, no, no, like she really exists. And I was like, oh, right, okay. I didn't realize. So I was playing a real life woman who ended up being an MP for South Wales. And so that was an amazing thing. And I had a feeling in my bones then when I auditioned for Pride that maybe it had gone my way. And luckily for me, it did, because that was another great thing to be a part of. Yeah.
Did you feel that way too about Baby Reindeer when you auditioned? Like you could feel it, like this is yours?
I felt from Richard and Veronica, the director, and obviously Richard, I felt a vibe. I felt like in hindsight, they said my audition, they were like, "Oh my God, I think we found her," So I felt something, and I thought, okay, maybe this could work. But
Yeah.
there's so many moving parts, so many people have to agree, and so many things to think about. So I understand why it took a while. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, one thing I love about the show is like there is no hero or villain of the piece. And like you said, like Martha is not your stereotypical evil stalker. Like she obviously has her own issues, but the show does create empathy for her. And I think you do get a humanity from her, like from your performance. So, and you never play to that crazy side of her. So how did you approach the character to ensure that she was seen as three-dimensional?
Yeah, I really never saw her in that light. I always saw, I suppose, the final voice message that she leaves for him in the scene in the pub, it really got to me as well in terms of what is at the core of the character and how complicated she is and how safe she feels around him in a way. I remember auditioning, when I was auditioning, I went through the scene with a friend of mine, the scene where we're outside the comedy club, and I say, and Martha says that she wants to zip him up and squirrel away inside him. And I said to my friend, "Oh my God, this scene is so romantic. I love this one." And we read it, and then she was like, "This is crazy." And I was like, and for the first time, I was like, "Oh, it could be read in a different way." Because I just thought, what a compliment to say. Absolutely. So I really did, empathize with her and her cuteness, I suppose, and what she sees in him. And Richard's so great in how he writes stage directions too. And there's this lovely bit I've spoken about before in the courtroom scene where he just says these are just two lost people, looking at each other. And I think that really comes across in how he wrote it. They needed each other at a time in each other's lives where they felt a bit maybe overlooked or unseen or invisible, and they kind of found each other in a way.
Yeah, for sure. It's definitely like a reciprocal relationship. Like they, he gives her the free drink and she feels seen by him and she starts to
Yeah.
shower him with attention. So he feels seen. So, and
Yeah,
she also immediately clocks that someone has harmed him, right? And that
absolutely.
connects
Yeah.
them. So
And how insightful, and also how to be on the receiving end of that. And it's true. You must feel like this person can see into your soul a little bit, and that's kind of addictive in a way. Yeah, so I think they were both in those initial stages, both intrigued by each other, in equal amounts, I guess. Yeah.
I do love that unzipping line because when I heard it, I also did not read it as like a weird, like
No.
absurd line. I was like, because it was the way you deliver it, and then you're just also kind of like invested in these characters at this point, and it
Yeah.
just kind of made sense and it did come off sweet. But I definitely understand to
How
like
it
an
could have
outsider,
yeah.
yeah. Or like especially we read it on paper
Yeah,
too.
just a standalone scene. I think we go, okay, but yeah, definitely.
Well, I also love that Martha, she seems very confident and secure with herself, and she definitely doesn't hold shame the way that Donnie does. And she also has a line, I think it's men who don't fancy me are either gay or blind.
Yeah, blind or gay. Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly. Yeah.
yeah. So was this
Yeah.
something you and Richard talked about?
I think it was very clear from the script how confident she was as a person. And when we were talking with our costume designer, I really wanted to feel comfortable, but also confident. There's that sequence where Martha dresses up to see him in the pub, and I mean, all those different outfits. And I thought it was really important that she felt really confident and glam. She from her point of view, she's a catch and he's lucky to have her. And so I think it was amazing, all those kind of chats we had about the costume, just to make sure it felt like it was never like what's the word, ridiculing or anything like that, because I think she just felt confident, and she felt like she wanted to get dressed up for him. So that was really important. And I felt really confident when I was playing her. She has a way, a forwardness to her that's quite confident, and she believes that they're meant to be, and he'd be lucky to have her. And I love that line by the Canalia men who don't date me, and that's kind of her vibe, really. Yeah.
Was there a particular piece of clothing that was to you just like quintessential Martha? Like you put this on and like you just feel like Martha?
I really like the outfit that I'm wearing in the cafe scene. It's like a pink jacket with big buttons, but also we had these white kind of creamy Crocs that I would wear. And I felt very sturdy, ready to nip off to solve a court case or whatever in those shoes, and comfy and practical. So that was a nice balance. Yeah.
That's what we need.
Yeah.
Well, we know she was a lawyer who, had previous legal issues. And in the final voicemail, we find out about her childhood and everything. But did you fill in the gaps of Martha's backstory yourself, or are those kind of details not vital to you?
I mean, quite a lot of the information that I got about Martha was in the script, because I just thought that Richard captured a character so clearly that was so nuanced. And like you say, that final voicemail, I think that one of the many themes in the show is that of trauma. And it's these two people who've gone through stuff in their past. For my own narrative of the character, I filled in a few gaps here and there when it was needed, but the majority of the stuff I just got from the script. It was all kind of there for the taking, really. And in those final voice messages that we recorded in ADR, there was like really interesting bits in there as well, which were like, one day he's wearing a white t-shirt and she says to him, and I thought you'd look so good in red. And then the next day you were wearing red. And I love that because it adds to this feeling that where she feels she's a little bit magic with him. And I think you do that when you like somebody. You think, oh my God, we're thinking the same thing, we're on the same page. And so all those little clues, I would kind of then elaborate what her home life would be when she's imagining what she's going to chat to him about the next day. And like in the cafe scene where I say, well, I want the Scotch broth, but I don't know if it's on the menu or not. That was one of our audition scenes, actually. But I love the thought of her kind of preparing that. And then the surprise when he adds, well, it might be on the specials though, because she probably never would have imagined a kind of retort like that. And so her dream of him is in reality even better than she could have ever have predicted or imagined for herself. And I think that's really nicely captured in those first initial episodes.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I was gonna bring up the voicemails because I was wondering like when you recorded all of that. So it was all after in post production and in ADR.
Yeah, I recorded some temporary ones on my phone so they could play back.
Okay. Yeah, that's what I was wondering because I was like, was Richard actually listening to anyone or just like a script supervisor
I
reading the
think
line?
there was a mix. I think he did do one where he listened to the voicemail, and then I think that for timing, they also did get the script supervisor read it out. But he obviously wrote it, so he knows it so well. And then my actual final day of filming was the final scene that we did in the courtroom, and then 6 months later, I went in to do ADR and did all of the voice messages. Yeah, and the final one we did was that last one, and actually, it was really nice to have that as the final moment with Richard. Really, yeah, we got quite
Yeah.
emotional.
Well, I feel like, I mean, I don't, from a layperson's perspective, I feel like voice acting is so hard and it's like a different muscle from, screen acting. And you did so many voice recordings for this. So how did you approach all of that where you do need to, where you're solely relying on your voice, but you
Mm.
you do need to paint a full picture of this woman and like her intentions and what she was feeling in those moments when she recorded these messages.
Yeah, we kind of paired them up to like, moods she was in, similar to what Donnie does, compartmentalizing complimentary ones. And we did a run so it felt like we were in the same space each time. Um, but by then I kind of knew the character so well that I was able to kind of quite quickly just get into that zone. And that final voicemail was what I always used to read if ever I needed to feel emotional as her, I would read that and it would get me every time. So it didn't take much. I think we did like one or two takes of it really, just because I thought it was so beautifully written. And really moving. Yeah. So it was, and it's also interesting when you do things so far, so much later. I'd
Yeah.
recorded and filmed and recorded a series of The Outlaws in the space of time that we finished filming, and then I did the ADR. So I was like, oh my gosh, and they'd been in the edit and they'd never left the world. So then I was like, you know, fresh and like after fresh out of filming
It's like
something
I
else. But
gotta
yeah,
get back into Martha. I need that
yeah,
dress.
exactly.
And
Yeah,
then
yeah, yeah. Get the
well,
crops
I do
back on.
love your final on-screen appearance in the courtroom when she pleads guilty and they have that final look between them. And I even when she pleads guilty, you almost kind of expect her to say not guilty. And it's
Yeah, that's the
how
thing
did,
I
yeah.
realized on the day, actually. And actually, that's what made me even, I suppose, more emotional is, this character has studied law in the past. And for her to say guilty is a big thing in anyway, that you half expect her to say not. And I think maybe the scene was written that way to as an almost as an apology from her side. Her admission of guilt for all three counts in the show is like an interesting moment that joins them together. And then obviously when she sees that he's there as well, there's that great stage direction, which is there's not a successful moment here. It's not a kind of haha, I've got you. It's just two lost people
Yeah,
looking at
no
each
no
other.
one wins here.
No one wins. There's no winner, yeah, absolutely.
And I love the ending too, like because nothing is tied up neatly, and he listens to
Yeah.
the voicemail. We find out the origin of the baby reindeer nickname is from her childhood, and he definitely understands Martha more. So what did you think of the ending and that scene between Richard and the
Oh my
bartender?
God. I loved that. Yeah. When I read that, I was like, genius. What a great way to bookend the show. How clever. And I love that I've heard so many different theories about it. So it's so great to be have a show that isn't clear cut necessarily in the ending. And so many people take away certain things. What did I make from it? I think I probably thought about it more along the Martha angle of him understanding her more. And in that act of kindness of the barman saying, "It's on me," he realizes what he meant to her, I think, in that moment is what I would maybe take away. But I've heard some amazing theories, you know.
Yeah. That always happens, right? Someone offers something you never would have thought of.
No, yeah, exactly. Yeah, yeah.
Do you think about like where does Martha go from here? Like, after this,
I
or
always
after you leave her
uh,
behind?
I didn't really think of that. No, I always was interested in where she'd come from, like what happened the day in the scene when I walk into the bar for that first time. What has she been from? And in my narrative, I'd imagined that whoever she was kind of connected with before that had ended, and then she came in, and but then again, I also wonder if he never offered her the cup of tea, like would she still have noticed Donnie, you know? Was it the act of kindness or him? I can't decide. So I always kind of think about those things. But yeah, I didn't think really what's next. No.
Like chicken or the egg? What came
Yeah,
first?
chicken or the egg, exactly. Yeah, yeah.
Well, obviously the show has been a huge hit, and you've been working for a very long time, like almost 2 decades. So what has been like the past month been like for you?
Yeah, it's been interesting. I feel exactly the same. I feel the same as myself as always, but then occasionally I'm like, oh, people can, why are they looking over here? And I'm like, oh, okay, yeah. And also I look like myself, so I forget as well. I said to somebody the other day, I got out of my car and walked around this corner, and this lady just screamed, and she just finished episode 7 and left her house, and then I was there. So I was like, I'm so sorry. But I've honestly so many lovely people have been coming up and just saying what the show meant to them.
Mhm.
When you I've been acting now for 17 years, and I think it's just you feel lucky when you get a chance to even work, let alone be in a show that is seen by so many people, and people are talking about it and enjoying it and saying what it meant to them. But with this show especially, the aftermath has been fascinating because so many people have been in touch with Richard, I know, talking about episode 4 and what that meant to them. And I think, you can do this job and like I say, feel really lucky to work, to entertain, to make people escape, but then occasionally you'll do something that kind of is changing people's lives, and that's something I always try and remember because so many people are watching his story and they're going, oh, that happened to me and I don't feel so alone now. And how amazing is that to be part of something that's doing that? Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Well, Jessica, it was great speaking to you. Thanks so much for your
You
time,
too.
and congratulations again on the
Thank
show
you
and
so much.
everything. This came full circle for you.
Yeah. Thank you so
Thank you
much.
so much. Have a good
Nice
day.
to chat to you.